أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, we will continue with the 20th letter, which is interpretation of a dua. We read at the very beginning. I don't have the Turkish, the Arabic version. Sorry, do you have it you opened or? Okay. Do you mind reading this Arabic part for us, the dua, slowly, phrase by phrase? Oh.
لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وعلى كل شيء قدير وإليه المصير.
And last week we finished our discussions about La ilaha illallah part, and inshallah we will continue with Wahdahu part, is the one part. But before going there, let's read the first phrase, there is no God but God, La ilaha illallah part. And the usual, I will ask the volunteer to read the first phrase, and if you have a microphone with you can take it as a chance to volunteer. Just press the power button. It means you accept the end user agreement. Yeah, alhamdulillah.
The first phrase?
Yeah, the first phrase. Let's read it. Just
The first phrase, there is no God but God. This phrase conveys the following good news to the human spirit: suffering as does countless needs and the attacks of innumerable enemies. On the one hand, the spirit finds a place of recourse, a source of help, which is open to it the door of a treasury of mercy that will guarantee all its needs. While on the other, it finds a support and source of strength, for the phrase makes known its creator and true object of worship, who possesses the absolute power to secure it from the evil of all its enemies. It shows its master and who it is that owns it. Through pointing this out, the phrase saves the heart from utter desolation and the spirit from aching sorrow. It ensures an eternal joy and perpetual happiness.
Jazakallah khairan. You've been with us at least 1 or 2 weeks, right? When we studied this part. Okay. But would you like to share with us the first impressions you had with the text part that you read? If you like, you don't have to, of course.
Well, I mean, here.
Oh, yeah, it's tough.
So here, Nursi is saying that the phrase "there is no God but God" should have some meaning for me. It'll have some effects on me. There's consequences to this phrase. It's not just I say there is no God but God, but then nothing changes, which is maybe how it generally happens in my life. But he's saying that there is a good news in this phrase: there is no God but God. It's almost, if you just look at the sentence, almost like, what does that sentence even mean? You can just gloss over it. But it's, according to Nursi, it means a lot more. It guarantees something to me so that my spirit finds a place of happiness, place of support. And it also gives me security because I know that it'll secure me from the evil of all my enemies, and that I have a master, or I have a creator who owns me, who owns my soul.
Jazakallah khairan. So, how do you, let's say, feel? It also makes kind of a quick jump between finding help and support and strength to knowing your owner. Like La ilaha gives you support, help, strength that you need against your enemies. and then also start talking about he's your owner, your true master, and so on. It shows its master. How did you feel?
I guess like how there's a connection there. I mean,
There's a connection, and how take such a phrase, such a text.
yeah, I think sometimes I can I feel like I am bound to other masters or other that have control over me. What it could be the environment I am in or the workplace I'm in, and I feel like I can't control it, but I'm kind of bound to it. And then there's other places that I've made masters through like myself. Like I think something is so valuable, so important. I chase it myself, but then it becomes at one point maybe too frustrating. So when I can stop and cut that relationship to no la ilaha illallah, like you are not my creator. This, achieving this success or this money or this or that or what or chasing certain thing. It's not like my creator. It's not like maybe the purpose. So when I can cut it basically, I do find a relief like, oh, my creator, la ilaha illallah. Like this is not my creator. Like if Brother Yusuf say, get out of my house or something, never come back. I might feel sad for a bit, but then with like la ilaha illallah, I could be like, he wasn't my guide or he wasn't my creator. He wasn't
I have been Nabi's house.
I have the second house. So I can see how there's they connect to each other and give you relief to know who your creator is.
Alhamdulillah. Do you mind passing microphone to Qadir, if you don't mind? Oh, God, please.
For the first phrase, the part that I understood the most was that the first part comes as La ilaha illallah. So first it's denial of false gods. So that is really important. For example, you're seeing different kind of things in the world. For example, the example of rain and the water dropping. So first you have to see that there is no power other than Allah that is doing that. So first you have to deny all of the other powers and then come to Allah. So that is like your destination. So first you should, if there is denial of other things that you might say like that is causing the rain or that is causing something to happen, and then you get to God. So that is what I understood from the first phrase.
Alhamdulillah. So one thing, listening to you, something came to my mind, and I wonder how you guys think about that. So when we say we have to first deny all gods or false idols, fight Allah, it sounds as if we are already trying to fight Allah, and to do that we have to first get rid of all gods. And one may say that I don't care, right? I don't want to find power. I don't want to deal with any gods anyway. So why I need to study this? Why I need to understand La ilaha illallah? Can't you be just in a neutral state where you don't care about any gods? So how the starting point is, like the phrase starts with La ilaha, right? And I would ask, what ilaha are you talking about? Like I'm not trying to find a true God anyway. Like I'm not trying to find any God. Why should I eliminate all false idols? And you don't have to have an answer, but if you have, I would be much
I don't have
delighted.
an answer for it, but if I think about it, it's like, for example, if you're doing something, you want to say like you're doing it something for it, like there's an essential byproduct from it. For example, if I'm studying, like why I'm studying, like for example, if it's money, or for example, if you're doing anything, what's the reason behind it? So I think finding ilah for me is like the meaning of life. For example, like what is this dunya for? What is this book for? So that would be my answer, but I don't know what the right answer is.
Forget about the right or wrong. Like let's have an understanding together. So the meaning of life, trying to find your God. So if I say, for me, meaning of life is the enlightenment. Like I just read books, I study art, yes. I do art, and this is the meaning of life for me. Flourishing as a human being. Okay. he's listing everything that he's, yes. Literature, yes. So this is the meaning. Sorry? Nothing. Oh, the philosophy. We are missing philosophy. That's true. Okay. So that's the wrong. The philosophy, studying, reading, also we belong to all kids. This is the meaning of life for me, right? Producing and then training the next generations. This is the meaning of life for me. So how your meaning fits to this picture?
So if you're passionate about something, you'll want to know where it's from. For example, if it's art, you'll want to know like where this art is coming from. For example, if someone is really good at playing some sport, so he'll attribute it to himself. But if he thinks deep down, like where is this coming from? Like why am I good at this sport? And the eventual conclusion would be, if he starts to think about it, that it is from Allah. It is not that he's good at this sport or like he's really good. But I think that his eventual decision would be that it is from Allah. So for example, if someone's really good at sports or music, he would then start to think about like, why am I good at this thing? Or like, how is this making me good? So if he wants to think about it, then he can reach the conclusion about Ilah, and then he can come to La ilaha illallah.
Need. That's my question. Like the need to come to this conclusion. And since you mentioned someone in sports, maybe we should continue with Abdullah. We know that he's the one who, it's turned off by like make it blue. Yeah.
What's the question?
Well, the question is, why do we need to study such a phrase like La ilaha illallah, and it starts with La ilaha. There is no God, like there is no idol, there is no ilah. And we are saying that, this phrase starts with denying all these false idols. And without doing that, you cannot find the true ilah, God. That was, our topic last a few weeks. And going to the beginning, I'm asking the question, and I'm like sincerely asking this. So can't I just say, what are you talking about? What ilah? I don't care about these ilahs. Like you are a religious person. If you want to find your ilah, go and find it. But for me, there's no ilah. I don't want to find it.
Irrelevant discussion.
Yeah, exactly. It's irrelevant discussion, I would say. So for instance, if you are good in sports and this is your passion, you would say, that's all I care. I want to be the best soccer player. And the rest, I don't care. It's irrelevant for me. Is there such a can you have such a stance in life?
Yeah, I think it's possible to have such a stance. For me, I don't think in a lot of things I've reached the point where I start to question those things. I'm not at that level, but I think someone can approach that point by getting really deep into whatever their subject matter is. And once you keep going deeper and deeper, you start to see spectrums and how everything in the word is, I don't know, like there's a lot of symmetry in the word, and you notice these spectrums. And sometimes when you invest a lot of hard work into something and it doesn't really work out, you realize that you're not the one in control. So it eases your heart, I guess, to be able to see that you don't have to do everything by yourself. There's someone who's taking care of you.
So, but do you mean, talking about God is a deep conversation, and a layman, for instance, any person without, say, proper education or, the high cognitive skills, whatever you want to call, someone who doesn't like to read, let's say, he wouldn't necessarily think about God at all because it's a deep subject. Is that what you mean? Or
I think in this day and age, it's very hard for someone to come to that conclusion unless they go through trials and some kind of harsh environment, because life has become much easier for a lot of this world, especially in major countries, compared to a few hundred years ago, or when the Quran was revealed, everyone was like way below the poverty line, which is today, and it's much easier to recognize these signs and see there's something. But these days, when people are provided all the necessities to live a comfortable life, I don't think it's that much easier now for
I
people
see.
to realize.
But nowadays, you say an average person should live their life without any consideration about any kind of ilah or any kind of God. Without having such a conception, they can, like an average person can live his or her life easy. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Jazakallah.
You're trying to convert him, or
No. I'm just trying to understand, how people think, what they think. And thank you for your honest answer. I really like it. Would you like something, Zarar? It seems like you, yeah.
Well, I've always differed with this, and we have talked about this a lot. I just think there is an inherent need in everyone. You might not understand it, or like specifically call it ilah, but that's what like everyone is seeking something, and the deep unsatisfaction, as the author says, like suffering as it does countless needs, attacks of innumerable enemies. Like there's no one here in the world that is not needed, does not need something. And whatever you make your mode of chasing it, that is your ilah. So ultimately, I think this is a conversation that is relative.
So if you are hungry, there is no way that you can live without satisfying this hunger, right? You have to get some food. And the food now is your ilah, you are saying, because it will
Yes.
satisfy your hunger.
Yes. We're thinking that the food will satisfy my hunger. At that point, food is my ilah, because for example, if I'm desperately hungry, the whole point of my life at this point in time is just to find food and just get food in my system. So everything I do, all my thoughts, all my actions are just for the sake of food. And that is ilah.
Yeah. And then you need to be, and you want to be healthy, let's say. So health is your ilah.
Yes.
Or any enemy that can attack you and destroy your health just in a matter of seconds is your ilah, the COVID.
Exactly.
Because there is no way you can overcome this, right? Even if you get rid of one virus, there will be another virus. The same ilah attacking you from other, again and again, different person, the angles. So what I'm understanding from what you said is, because we have these countless needs and attacks of innumerable enemies, which is what author said, very interesting. It sounds like you read the text, but just kidding. Because you have countless needs and attacks of innumerable enemies, and because this is the human reality, whether you live today or 5 centuries ago, it wouldn't change. The human being would have the same needs.
Exactly.
Needs may change, right? Maybe technology would, develop some, like introduce us more needs or less. It doesn't matter. But the idea of need, the countless needs, will be always there. Hence, your chase for loss is always there. So does this claim fit to our reality? That's a good explanation. I like it. But does it fit to our reality? Let's look at our lives, daily lives, and answer this question. Do we find ourselves trying to satisfy or please things other than us, or including us, like our desires, for instance, sometimes we try to satisfy. Do you find ourselves in such a situation in daily life? Then you say something, maybe?
I was just going to answer that question and say that like in my daily life that yes, I do find myself like trying to either like in my work life trying to please like my boss or supervisor in like doing my lab work and experiments, and so that's like pretty much half of my day is spent trying to do that. And then I guess when I come home, I do feel kind of like, oh, I have to now kind of take care of myself. I have to feed myself. And then after that, I'm like kind of bored and I feel like I want to do things that make me feel happy. And so sort of this last sentence, it ensures an internal joy, a perpetual happiness. That really kind of stood out to me because I think at the end of the day, we all sort of want that like eternal feeling of happiness. So I think I find myself like trying to chase that feeling in like sort of things that I do in creation. Like if I'm, for example, feeling bored, maybe I'll watch a TV show, but then I get bored of the TV show or it ends, so I try to play a game, but then I finish that or I get tired of it. So it's like really easy to see now that things in my life end very quickly and I feel kind of bad when they end. So, it's like constantly chasing something to keep me like happy and satisfied, but then realizing that no, actually none of these things are going to actually like fully satisfy me. So even if I satisfy my supervisor and get my PhD, then I have to start a whole other new journey of like finding an actual job or doing something else with my life, and that's like another thing I have to chase. So it really never ends. And so I think, really the concept of la ilaha is like ruling out those things is like the purpose of my life and coming to the conclusion that Allah is the only thing that will actually eternally satisfy me.
So it seems like then my understanding is the concept of ilah is not foreign to us anyway. And when I say us, I'm not talking about the Muslim people. The concept of ilah is not foreign to any human being who has needs and try to satisfy these needs. And we are also imagine ourselves to be not contained, but confined in a system in which there are some rules, and I have to live by them, which we call natural laws, right? There are all forces in the nature, blind forces, and then I have to live with them. Whatever happens to me, it's in their hands. So the idea of ilah, no matter where I look from, what perspective, it's always there with me. It's not something foreign. So going back to last comment about the historical nature of these things, I feel like just the opposite, to be honest. Like nowadays, people are chasing even more. Like I'm talking to, every time I talk to an undergrad student, for instance, at Penn, one thing I realize that they are taking all the classes that more than they need to, or they exploring all these different majors. I'm taking classes from this, from that, from that, from that. I couldn't decide what to do. This is my second year, but I'm still exploring. So this chasing after things is even more pronounced in our age. So it seems like with every so-called advancement, we end up having even more needs, realizing that we need even more needs. So we have to satisfy more idols than before. Before it was just a few statues, stone statues that, you know, this put this Sanam. And now we have thousands of them. So the idea of ilah may be even closer to us. And this la ilaha part is then, it's a need of a human being, not only Muslim. So it's very relevant. Whomever you talk to, it's very relevant. Like, forget all this ilah. You need to get rid of them. And then you will find your true owner, master. Any questions?
You just mentioned that the problems are, people are pursuing these problems more nowadays. I guess I agree with you, because definitely people want more and more, the greed is increasing. But these problems, they're not life threatening, but they're not as, they don't have as big an effect on a person's life. Like if you took this class or didn't take this class, it doesn't matter as much. But a few hundred years ago, it would be more like if you get some kind of a sickness, you don't have a treatment, you don't know if you're going to get food at the night, if you're going to have food at the table. So those things actually directly were concerned with your survivorship. And I think if you're in a situation like that, it's much easier to see like where God stands in my life. And that's why places like Africa, which are very below the poverty line, a lot of Muslims there. And it's because I think they face a lot more trials. It's much easier to see where God stands by learning through those trials. That's why I was saying that these days it might be much easier. But I think I did undermine that. I'm coming, I guess, more from my personal perspective, that there are not as many problems. But I think, yeah, these days people do have a lot of problems that they worry about a lot. It's always on their minds. So definitely realizing definitely takes that burden off of them.
No, I totally understand. And while listening to you, I just remember that one may, for instance, argue that, I will give an extreme example, the suicidal rate at Penn is probably higher than drugs among students. So, sorry? Oh, just, remembered some statistics, and you can extrapolate that to, suicidal rates here at Penn or the Drexel is probably higher than many these underdeveloped countries. You can take the same thing, mental health issues and so forth as well. So what I'm trying to say is, it's true, maybe access to food is easier now in average. But at the same time, access to people life is maybe, not that great.
People create problems for themselves.
Exactly. So this need cycle never change. Never changes. Like the shapes change, whether it is food that you are chasing, the basic food you are chasing, or you are chasing some ice cream, right? It doesn't, like, it changes, but the idea of chasing for something and it's being a life-threatening chase, I think it doesn't change much. People still die, and people still die miserably. And we have miserable lives. Like, just personal, forget about the averages. Personally speaking, I would never say that there's a moment of life that I felt fully satisfied, so peaceful, that I don't need anything. I don't remember such a moment in my life. Yeah, please.
Just if you have somebody in a village life, you can maybe make such a comparison, the relatives in there. Like people in village life are in need of many things. If you were to count it, maybe they need let's talk about someone today in a village. So basic needs, food and whatnot, and it's just countable number of types of food because that person is not aware of, I don't know, different tropical,
Shawarma.
shawarma, tropical fruit or anything. That person has already tasted and knows of 20 different types of food in their life and they desire for them. Because they have never tasted, I don't know, papaya fruit. They don't desire for papaya. They don't even know that it exists, right? And for them, if they have a truck, more than enough. They don't know that a Tesla exists. They don't know that a Porsche Carrera exists or anything of that sort. So they don't have a desire for them. It doesn't exist for them. They haven't seen any plane, maybe they're not having a desire to fly. Most, maybe they have a desire to see the city, but they don't know London exists. They don't have a desire to go and see London.
You don't have to pee.
Yeah.
They don't even know that.
So for those people, really the number of needs are lesser. As the civilization developed, we became poorer actually because we increased the number of needs. Now you have the desire for a Porsche Carrera, but I mean, it's a need to you because you would be happy or you think you would be happy if you have it, but you cannot fulfill it. So civilization in this sense made us poorer, although we think like the quality of life increased, now everybody's above the poverty line. But the thing is, the poverty line raised so up, if you cannot buy an iPhone 14 to your child, you consider yourself poor. This is how we end up becoming. So this is why you will see some girls, like teenagers, committing suicide because their parents didn't buy them an iPhone 14, for example. I think this is some sort of an upside down way of how we became more needy than ever. And this is in this third phrase, the first phrase, author was mentioning the neediness. Human is needy anyways. We are becoming more needy than ever because of the civilization becoming more common, newer things come into being, and because of ads and everything, you feel like, oh, you will be happy if you get this iPhone 14. And I give the example of this teenager committing suicide because we had something like this in Turkey, like the mother took away the phone of that girl and she just committed suicide. So
it's not a joke.
It's not a joke. It's real. It's real. So that need is the gist of the matter. The need is there. And it's not decreasing, but increasing because the options are decreasing. Before that, you only were knowing of 20 things. Now you know 200 things, and you are becoming more needy. So just one thing that I will add here. There is no God, but God is. So Ilkan's question was, as if there's this other alternative. It's, well, there's no God, or this one option, there's no God. Another option is there's no need for discussion of God. This is what we're kind of saying. Like just as if you're restricting yourself with the idea of God. I mean, have you ever worried about there is no pickles or there is pickles? Like these are pickles I am doing there. Like existence or non-existence of pickles. Who cares? I mean, if it's not part of your thing. I come here and said, which group you belong to? Are you among the pickle lovers or pickle haters? You say that I'm the pickle non-carers. It's not part of me. I don't care about it, right? So what Pirkat is asking is God something like that? Is it possible to say that there's God, there's no God, there are multiple gods? And then there is this other group which says, what are you talking about? Like there is no notion or the need for discussion about God. So my understanding here is there is no God but God, as we discussed over the past 3 weeks, is necessary conclusion of this existence. But then there's this other one. Is it an option to say that, well, there's no God? Our conclusion was that actually either you will arrive at the conclusion that there is no God but God, or you will find yourself living in a life in which everything is a God. There's no third option of to live in a godless world. Everything is God in your perspective. Like, you might not be calling it as God, but what you find yourself in is actually, you are treating everything as a God. There's no God is not an option.
There's a comment from, I think he gives an example. He says, you need a car in Philly because septa is najis, dirty. Have you, like, because of the age, so I apologize, I don't want to sound aged, but have you ever seen non-smartphone use it? Okay.
Nokia 310.
Okay.
Didn't have as much.
So with these non-smartphones, you need a signal, like the cellular signal. If you have the cellular signal, it works. You don't need anything else. And when you have this, you are happy. All you need is the cellular signal, and you are happy. With these smartphones, which are advancement for sure, now you need much more. You need cellular signal, and then you need GPS signal, and then you need proper camera, then you need proper speakers, and then you need, and you can add this, right? Every year, the hardware is updated, not because, I mean, part of it, they want to sell you something new, but other than that, the software or the hardware cannot handle the new software. So they have to update it. So with the previous generation of phones, we still had things like CPU or RAM, but nobody even talked about them before. We didn't even know phone would have a processor because it was good anyway. Whatever happens, you didn't need a powerful CPU, right? With these phones, it sounds like an advancement, but actually your, let's talk about the possibilities. The possibility of being sad is increased multiple times. When you lost your GPS signal, you are sad. When your camera is not good enough, you are sad. Especially my wife, like she's so sad if the camera is not good, right? So more needs comes with more so-called advancements.
I really agree with you. And laptop is really.
Oh, the microphone. Oh, we have online people, they wouldn't hear you. Oh, turn on as well.
I would really agree with you because laptop is really famous and I'm really sad about it. So that's why. That's why I'm agree with you.
It's exactly like sometimes like a life-threatening. Sometimes we come to the point that almost we are ready to commit suicide because of something, because our laptop doesn't work or the phone doesn't work. So it becomes seriously life-threatening. It needs being imposed on us.
Wanted to, I don't know if this is relevant or, but you mentioned poverty line has come up, but I think an argument can be made that there are still a lot of people around who do realize after trial and error that they don't need these things and this is just marketing that's being sold to them. And there are a lot of people in the US considered like minimalists who live in their cars and they realize after consuming a certain amount of things that these things are false gods and they don't need them. but they also don't really have to reach that decision of realizing that there is a God. But they also realize that they don't need these things in life after experimenting. Let's say I want an iPhone 14, I get it. After 2 days, I realized, oh, I don't really need the camera. I don't need the GPS signal. So I'm not going to upgrade the next year. So after trial and error, to realize that all of this is just marketing. That's to you. There are a lot of people who do it, but doesn't let them come to a conclusion that there is that one God.
These people apply the same sociological game when it comes to their need for breathing. The blood needs to be circulated. The gravity needs to be there so that they can walk. The sun has to be there so that they can, live, let's say, the energy cycle and so on.
So the thing is, like, these things are being provided so abundantly and freely that we never really come to the conclusions of actually thinking about these things. Where are these coming? I know we should, but I'm just trying to.
No. Forget about
Today.
this part. We don't, like, if we can live without thinking, then we should live. Like, if you ask me, I don't have these normative ideas like, oh, you should do this. No, if you can live without it, you don't need to. The question is, can you do it without questioning? So, for instance, like a student, right? Can you live without thinking about your relationship with your professor? Can you live without thinking? You have to.
I can, but I know a lot of students who won't.
How can you? Like, you don't care about the professor, whether he teaches or not, whether he gives you a grade or not.
Well, like for his jobs, I know he needs to grade and everything, but I don't care if they come to the top or not. I do a lot of independent learning myself, but I understand.
Like independent learning, substitute the idea of professor with learning material. Doesn't matter. Like, I call it professor, you call it self-learning kit. Can you live without having a relationship with the self-learning kit?
How do you define a relationship?
Like, you don't care. It exists or not. You don't care. It includes the right information or not. You don't care.
I guess
You have it or not. You don't care.
just replace. In the end, it depends on my life goal. If I'm trying, like right now, I'm trying to make money or get a job or get somewhere. But in the end, if it's your goal is to survive an average life, do you care about a relationship with anyone?
Yourself. Forget about, hypothetical people. For you, what is your goal today?
Graduation, is it better?
Sure, yeah.
Playing soccer and enjoying it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Soccer.
Care about the soccer, like whether it gives you pleasure or not. You have to, for instance, act in a certain way when you play soccer, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't follow the path you would like. So you have to obey the rules of the nature so that the ball will go to what is it? Goal, yeah. So you have to abide with these rules.
So abiding by the rules equals.
You care. Like, you follow them. Otherwise, you see.
You're not making a conscious decision to follow these rules, or sometimes just unconsciously all of things are happening, like you're breathing, but you're not thinking about it, right?
If you want to go to soccer play, and your mom, like, assume that you are living with your mom, I don't know, and your mom says, no, you can't go. You would be upset.
A few years back, yes, but today.
I mean, this is just an example, whatever makes you upset. Yeah, today. I'm sure there are certain things that makes you upset when they are not fulfilled.
But they cancel on you.
Yes. Like, think about think about any example. Think about any example that when it's not fulfilled, you feel upset.
I guess it would be something where I put in the effort and I wasn't rewarded for that effort. That would make me sad.
Yeah. So then you are expecting reward or appreciation from something. You put hard work, and your professor, whatever you put this hard work for, needs to appreciate you. Now it means you care about this appreciation.
Sacrifice the animal to somebody statue. It didn't give it back. Like, in the old days, you say, "Oh, I want to buy this, whatever." So your Khan said, "Oh, go and slaughter an animal to this statue." You slaughtered the animal. 5 days passed, somebody else bought it, and you're upset. So you gave something you didn't receive back. You gave your effort to soccer, you gave your effort to school, whatever it is, and you didn't get back. So you sacrificed and you are not paid back, and you're upset.
So, and where does God fit in this?
The school is your God. Whenever you are expecting the appreciation or the reward is your God. You are sacrificing your time to gain the title because you think title will give you something. Is it not just trying to get my title, graduation? Because there's a joy in it. I mean, partially that's true. But you are cheering for the graduation because you think graduation will satisfy certain needs of yours. Without graduation, you cannot find job, you think. Without graduation, you cannot earn money, you think. Without graduation, you cannot take care of your family, future family. You see?
Without graduation, no family.
Without graduation, yes, even better. No family. The father of the girl that you like wouldn't give you the girl because you are not graduated. This is life. And you are available.
Get about your father. Your girl will.
Yes. So when you are honest to yourself, right, you have to think, this is your reality. The graduation is something that you have to satisfy. Otherwise, there is no happiness to you. And this is the definition of worshiping. If I don't please it, I will not get a reward. This is worship. So currently you are worshiping, just many of us, all of us, the graduation, the title that you receive. This is your idol right now. Because you think it has the power to give you success and the family and the money.
The thing is, like, I completely, like, those things you mentioned, you won't be able to get without graduation. I think if God wills it, I'll be able to get, like, in my case,
What about who talks about God?
No, in my case, if I'm talking about my case, I have this belief that I cannot really put logic behind it, but I would always fall and say, like, there will always be someone who takes care of me, and that is God. But I was more generalizing about people who are not, let's say, brought up like me or not Muslims. And for them, I was saying I don't know how it can come to such a conclusion. But for me, I don't know, I have this, maybe, alhamdulillah, already have it, but I cannot backtrack it and realize how someone, maybe if I was not lucky enough to be born in such a spot, would I still be able to recognize that there's no God but Allah?
So I guess the first question, so all these weeks, we made this emphasis, the Allah has to be conclusion. So forget about Allah for now. I mean, Allah forgive me. What I mean is we have to first understand the idea of Ilah first. And my claim is that this idea of Ilah is there for everybody, no matter what culture they are from, no matter what age they are at, what sex and so on, it doesn't matter. The idea of Ilah is there for everybody. For a student, for instance, the graduation is ilah. You have to eliminate it, otherwise it will stay as your ilah. Like this is the default mode. There are multiple ilahs in your life. This is the, the argument. It always starts with ilah. It doesn't start with Allah. For everybody, every human being, it starts with ilah. And it always starts with false ilahs. This is humanity. That's the reason Quran starts with La ilaha. For any human, including yourself as a Muslim, every moment of your life starts with a false ilah. First, you think the graduation will give you happiness until you realize it's not your ilah, but have to come to this realization. Otherwise, it will stay as your ilah. Even if you are Muslim, it will stay as your ilah. If you do not realize that it's a false god.
For my particular case, I don't think there is a ilah right now.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, but
You are so pious, let's say.
if I think about generally for human beings, I can still not understand how they can come to this conclusion. Like if they take everything out, how would someone come to this conclusion? I'm having trouble understanding.
Oh, good.
So, not calling something as God or ilah doesn't mean that I'm not treating it as God or ilah. So if I see it as a source which satisfies me, this is what it is. That's the conversation. And in this life that I live, something new comes, which is a moment, is a new moment, a new being. And in this new moment, I have some expectations, some desires being satisfied. I am thirsty, I'm going to drink water. As simple as that. If I am walking towards the kitchen to get the water, so I that like if you just look at me, you can say that, well, are you going to satisfy your thirst by water? I would say, of course. Like what? How else do you expect me to satisfy my thirst? Then Birkam would say in this case, well, water is your God in this case. I mean, this is what ilah in this case means. There is a new being in your life, new existence, which is water and thirst being satiated. So, yeah, I lean toward some source. That source becomes my God. That's what it is. I mean, if there's only one way out of that, either I would say that nothing exists actually. There's no existence. This is the only way I can fool myself to say that there is no God. This is the only way out, actually. If I deny existence, then I can say, since there's no existence, then there's no need for source of existence. But it is a defendable position. Nobody will take me serious. Like if I claim that nothing exists, you would say that, come on, like you don't exist, this doesn't exist. Then with my head, my non-existing head with non-existing stone, and then going to now start making sense, right? So unless this is the case, since existence is there, then there has to be, I mean, either I articulate it and call it God, or I just call it something else. Since there is existence and it's not constant, it's constantly changing. The only constant thing is the constant change. I have to find a source for it. If I go to water for the source of thirst, satisfying my thirst, then this is my goddess. So this is why there is no world in which I can say there is no God. Either I would say there's no God but God, or I would say everything is God. There's no middle ground in here. So this is why Virkan's emphasis is Quran opens up by the idea of God because it's already there. God means source of existence. The existence is outsourced. I do observe it's coming anew. Where is this coming from? So this is why the topic of God is not artificial, imposed from outside, or it is artificial. No, it is. If the term God sounds too philosophical or too religious and whatnot, just talk about how does the being happen? Because it is new. So this is the topic of conversation in general.
Assalamualaikum. Yeah, I think just building off of and perhaps repeating what some of Brother Yusuf and Brother Rikan have said, like the first sentence of the first phrase talks about goodness, the human spirit suffering as it does, countless needs, and the attacks of innumerable enemies. Like, I just have to start with, okay, do I suffer in any facet of my life? Is there any sorrow in my life that this phrase will take me from utter desolation? Because if there is desolation, if there isn't sorrow to begin with, then I'm not going to need being rescued from any situation either. So, and this goes back to what you were saying about like caring about my relations, interactions with this. Like, I have endless things that I'm constantly thinking about. Oh, I have to do this. I have to finish that. I have to please this person. You know, and even if like I say, okay, I don't really care about those things, I want the food that I eat to taste tasty. I want to enjoy it. If I am craving like chocolate or something sweet, I want there to be something sweet in the house to eat. Like there's always a small the hint is given to the host. There's always something that I am in need of, whether we label it as like significant or as super significant, whether it's something like getting a job, graduating, or it's something like, oh, I really want a sort of pretzel stick or something like that. There's no like state of being in which just indifferent to anything, at least for myself, right? Even when there's nothing going on, I'm like, oh, I feel bored. I want some sort of engagement, some sort of interaction. There's always some need that I don't have to look too far to locate within my life. And most of the time we locate them very easily. I wish my relationship with my parents were better. I wish I could finish this degree that I'm in. I wish, I didn't have this financial situation to think about, or I didn't have all that insurance. Like, there's always something usually at the sort of focal point of our lives, or maybe multiple focal points of our lives. So it's when I look at my life and I locate the difficulty that I'm facing, or the sorrow that I experience, some sort of suffering, some sort of satisfaction that I'm experiencing, that becomes the point where I can then ask myself, okay, like, am I attributing to something qualities that it doesn't have, that it can't have? Am I expecting fulfillment from something that can't fill me completely in the way that I expect it to? And I just, alongside that, I just wanted to also say, whether we come from Muslim families or we don't, I think if this phrase is to mean anything for myself, of there is no God, of there is nothing in my life, in this world, that can satisfy me, that can give me the contentment, happiness that I seek, except one who has, put me in this situation, then it must be a phrase that as Brother Yusuf was saying, I'm in constant change, that I constantly can witness and confirm, right? That it's not just something I say once in my life, or I say, okay, got a check mark, but it's something that I have to confirm of like, okay, is this really the truth for me? Because again, like, there's no point in my life, as Brother Rikan was saying, in which I haven't been concerned about something, worried about something, like little, bigger, small, scale doesn't matter. So there's always a moment in which I have to either confirm La ilaha illallah or reject it. And it's this constant confirmation that I am invited to at every aspect of my life.
Any other comments, questions so far? Okay. You can keep it. Probably Zerim will speak later. Just make sure it's off. Okay, Jazakallah. So okay, we can continue then. Inshallah, the second phrase. And second phrase is about wahdahu. So he is the one. Sorry? Oh, he is one. He is one. Means, okay, the la ilaha illallah, we said there are all these false gods we are surrounded by. No matter where you live, what culture you are from, whether you call yourself as Muslim or atheist or not, doesn't matter. You are surrounded by all these false gods. And you need, and because of that, you have this sorrow, right? Deep inside, and in your practical life as well, following you always. And Quran comes, revelation comes to your question, Abdullah. Without revelation, without Quran, for instance, there is no way you can come up with this idea yourself that everything is a false god, but there is Allah. You can only realize that all these false gods that I am, following, they are nothing but like me. You can realize that. But the solution has to come from outside, revelation. Hence, everybody needs revelation. Everybody needs prophet. So your duty, if you come to a conclusion, don't assume you already came to this conclusion. One day, you really, genuinely come to this conclusion that La ilaha illallah, now your duty is to share these news with others as well. It has to, the solution has to come from the revelation. But anyway, here we say, okay, but how about the idea of having multiple true gods? So this phrase is about, and what the he is one. So let's read the second phrase, inshallah. Sarah, would you like to read it for us?
The second phrase, he is one. This phrase announces the following good news, which is both healing and a source of happiness. Man's spirit and heart, which are connected to most of the creatures in the universe and are almost overwhelmed in misery and confusion on account of this connection, find in the phrase he is one a refuge and protector that will deliver them from all the confusion and bewilderment. That is to say, it is as if he is one is saying to man, God is one. Do not wear yourself out having recourse to other things. Do not demean yourself and feel indebted to them. Do not flatter and fawn on them and humiliate yourself. Do not follow them and make things difficult for yourself. Do not fear them and tremble before them. For the monarch of the universe is one. The key to all things is with him. The reign of all things are in his hand. Everything will be resolved by his command. If you find him, you will be saved from endless indebtedness, countless fears. I think my initial reaction is that it's kind of similar to what we were kind of talking about in the first phrase. where it's a little different in the first phrase. All these other ilah are phrased as needs and enemies, and in this phrase it's kind of saying like we don't treat them like that. We like flatter and fawn over all these like other like quote unquote gods in our lives. um and so I think I guess it's kind of meant to be like a reassurance that you only have to look towards one thing and you don't have to please like all these other things, because at the end of the day, if I have to think about like all the things in my life that I have to like satisfy, it's very tiring. So I see it as something that will make me very like stressed, anxious, because like my mind can only handle like so many things at once. So hearing that, oh, this is just the one thing you have to do. Sorry, I'm moving this around a lot. Hearing that this is just the one, like he is one, and there's only one you need to satisfy is reassuring in a sense, because it, I guess, frees up a lot of my brain space.
Jazakallah. Abdullah, would you like to share your thoughts as well? I'm giving you the opportunity, of course, like if you like. Yeah, Jazakallah.
I guess
And sorry for the interruption from the beginning, but don't rush, so that you give some time to Sultan as well to think about it.
may God help you. So I guess initially I was thinking, is there really a difference in meaning between there is no God but God and then he is one? And I see the next one is he has no partner. In some sense, I think it's just an emphasis on the same thing. Like I don't really see the nuance, the difference in nuance. It's more just repeating what has already been said in a different way, more emphasis on it. But I guess as Nursi is saying here, just going deeper, like going more into contemplation, what does it actually mean? One sentence, I mean, that's all I really had to say, was which I liked, was he said, man's spirit and heart, which are connected to most of the creatures in the universe and are almost overwhelmed in misery and confusion on account of this connection. Which, just thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, I'm connected to everything. And a lot of times this connection causes me a lot of confusion and a lot of misery. Like if I feel sadness in my heart, I don't know where it came from or who put it there. If I could take it out, take it out. If I could take out this feeling in me of like not liking, let's say, hot weather or something, I would instantly take it out, because it's like, why do I want to feel dislike to something, which only gives me suffering almost? But I have this connection with everything around me. I might not like, or something affects me in a different way, and I find all of these emotions are like being created in me. Like I'm overflowing with emotions that are being created in me, and like, what is the purpose of this? Like, I can't stop myself from saying why. Like, what is the meaning of all of this? And then Nursi is saying, phrase wahdahu, or he is one. I guess all of these emotions, these feelings, it's kind of meant to make you question and then take you to some type of understanding of
Don't rush.
Okay. So yes, to me, like yeah, like Abdurrahman said, like brother Abdurrahman said, first and second, they're kind of similar, very similar, I'd say. They both talk about this like perceived dependence of me, of me, yourselves, to everybody else, to like, this patent, like with figures, gods, whatever you may want to call them. But really, this dependence, like, are we really dependent upon each other? Like, am I really dependent on Abdurrahman? Am I really dependent on Yusuf? For example, if Yusuf, like, throws me out of this house, what's going to change? Right? Like, nothing's going to change, I guess. So in that sense, you have this connection, but you don't really depend on each other. You're really dependent of each other as far as my existence goes. So then, if I have all these stories, all these things, then I should depend on something, right? On someone, on something out there. And I guess what Nursi is saying is that there is one that you do depend on. that you will always depend on. And that thing will always, be there for you. Whether good or bad, it will always be there for you. And yeah, so I think if there's one dependence, there is some dependence, there's only one dependence. And that's all, I should be worried about.
You want to say something? There's a comment I will read. I just realized that so before Sultan speaks, I said the next I will ask Dua to share her thoughts, but my mic was off, so probably she didn't hear, but then she shared her comments anyway. So now I still have an excuse to ask her to speak. So she asked the, let's say, deep question. She says, what does oneness mean here? How is wahad is different? How is wahad different than ahad? Would you like to open up a little bit, Dua? If you are able to speak, of course. I don't know what situation you are in. If you are not, we can just ask to others. I can torture others. Okay, let's go with your friend Zarar then. If you don't want to. Oh, your mic is on. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm not able to speak that freely. I just had that question because I remember when we were talking about Surah Ikhlas, Yusuf said Ahad is different from Wahad, and I noticed that it's Wahdahu la sharik here. So I just wanted to know what that means. Especially because I don't think, for me at least, Nursi justifies how God is one translates to all the things that he's saying, he says, that is to say, it is as if he is one is saying to man, God is one, do not wear yourself out. I don't think that is justified for me, which is why I want to know what wahad means in this context, at least.
I'm muted. Sorry. I was saying that we can discuss the difference between ahad and wahad. We can. Sorry. Yeah. We can do that, but let's assume we don't even we haven't heard about ahadiyya. Ahad. We need is he is one. That's the only thing we know, and as in English, he is one. So I want to understand, why do you think that it's not justified to say he is one, saying to man, God is one, do not weigh yourself out having recourse to other things. Don't mean yourself and feel indebted to them. Why he is one does not justify this?
I think these are big ideas, like this is sort of a little far-fetched, like that is to say, it is as if he's the one is saying to man, do not wear yourself out, do not demean yourself, do not flatter them. And I'm like, it isn't justified to me. Like, there isn't a logical link between why God being one would make me feel all these things. Like, what does the oneness of God have to do with me not feeling bad, or me feeling like he is enough? Because one is different from like, oh, like he's fulfilling your needs. Like, if it was samad, I would understand it, because it's like, okay, you have all these needs and God is going to fulfill them. So I'm like, okay, there's a link there. But how is the oneness of God in this case help me? Especially because, like, when we were studying Ikhlas, it was like one means absolute, like ahad means absolute, So even then, in that context, it makes sense. But over here, like, because it says the word one, I'm wondering if it's the number one because it's wahad and what that would have to do with all of this.
Oh, okay. So I was just thinking of kind of like an example from my life that kind of like for me came to my head when I was thinking about, why would it be reassuring to hear that he is one and not think all these things? So one of my so in my program we have a supervisor in our lab who like oversees all our work. But sometimes a student can be supervised by two people. And so one of my classmates actually was having some difficulties because one supervisor wanted things a certain way, and then the other supervisor wanted some things in a totally different way or saw her data with some interpretation that the other supervisor or mentor didn't agree with. So she's been having all this trouble, trying to satisfy them both because they have two completely different wills, two like completely different ways of seeing things. And I think you could maybe like extrapolate this to other like aspects of life. This is like a very simple example, but for me it just says that like you can like things you need to satisfy in your life, there's different ways of like different ways of like different needs have different ways of like satisfying them, I suppose. So for me it's just like if God wasn't one, then there would be another something that would have there's a guarantee that it would have like the exact same like form of like worship or alliance, or that I don't know, it just seems like trying to say he is not one just doesn't make sense, and then you end up trying to like chase after things that aren't like relevant. And like in the case of the two supervisors, you're dealing with two conflicting like wills, I guess, or intentions.
Jazakallah, a good example. I'm trying to come up with a good example myself, but I cannot. Probably Yusuf has one.
So this phrase is, the following phrases will be similar, is answering some of the either feelings or ideas that I have, possibly, potentially, answer them specifically. Otherwise, yes, La ilaha illallah answers all those questions if you would like to pay attention to it, to its depth. But so when it comes to here, as the author also emphasizes, when you look at the universe, you see that there are different types of beings. If I use a religious terminology, I would say different manifestations of God's names. But I mean, you do observe apples over there, then oranges here, then there are cows and sheep, and then fish. So all different types of existence is there. To give a different example, you see purple, yellow, green, all different shades of sun's rays. But you said, well, it's coming from a single sun, actually. Although they are all different colors, it is a single color of sun, actually. Once they go through some prism, they look like different. So you might get the impression, if you are not aware of the sun, forget the sun for a second, you might say that, oh, there are purples and then the greens and then yellows and oranges. So this takes this multiplicity in my world, because in my experience, there's multiplicity. Actually, this life is all about multiplicity. There's Zarar and there's Abdullah, like different personalities. Everything is like that in this existence. So wahdahu in this sense is erasing or answering this feeling or doubt, or I'll go with Zarar's comment from previous week, false intuition that maybe there are multiple sources. A Muslim version of this would be, in a sense, oh, God created the universe and then just different, sort of distributed his qualities to the. He allowed them to function. Like God created the fire and now fire is allowed to burn, sort of a thing. So in this sense, again, I am distributing Godhead to multiplicity. Wahdahu in this sense is gathering all my attention in this multiplicity, pointing to the single source. So Wahdahu in this sense is looking for a human who is living this day-to-day life with oranges and yellows and all different colors of existence. And this is, if you like, the front end that you are interacting with in the existence. Just waking me up and saying that source is one. Don't get lost in this multiplicity. Go back to the source.
So my understanding with Dua's question was, which maybe I might misunderstood because it's a challenge, the question itself. Saying that even if I understand he is one, how this will solve my problem of trying to, satisfy multiple things. That was his question. And am I getting you right, Dua?
Yeah, that was part of it. Yeah.
And that was like the question itself, I couldn't understand. Because to me, like, if you understand he is one, automatically it means you don't have to satisfy anything else.
Yeah, and also in here, wahdahu is ending with a who. So this is now we are adding on top of la ilaha illallah. Like this phrase wahdahu means Allah is wahid. So you already went through la ilaha illallah. So now the notion of ilah and la ilaha illa Allah is established in you. Here we are not trying to re-establish independently an all-powerful maker and whatnot. What is happening in here is, my understanding, you might be convinced about la ilaha illallah, but still you might be falling into a certain trap, which is you are experiencing different existence still, because you don't see God. You are seeing oranges and apples, and birds and fishes. Wahdahu in this case is warning you, saying that all these are coming from a single source. This is what it is doing. Because the way Dua is asking is as if wahdahu in and of itself is not answering my question. It's not in and of itself. So what is happening here, I think, is it is now fixing potential problems in my understanding of my maker, of my creator. So wahdahu is a wake-up call. And this is what it is actually. Everybody to a certain extent believes in God, which in tomorrow's discussion, we will talk about the third phrase, for example, he has no partner. It's going to be a better example for what I'm trying to say. I mean, after you say la ilaha illallah, why would you talk about la sharika lah? He has no partner. I mean, if there's no God other than him, definitely he doesn't have any partner. What is the point of repeating the same thing again and again? Because if that emphasis is not made, you might imagine God who doesn't, like, who is the only ilah, but without noticing, you might be imagining or attributing some partners to him. The same thing applies to here with wahdahu. You might be saying that, oh, I got the point, la ilaha illallah, perfect tawheed and whatnot, yet in your perception, maybe with your intuition or with your understanding, you might be missing the fact that all these different existence is coming from a single source. using the color analogy, you might be saying that, oh, orange color and yellow color and purple color, that they're all different colors, but you might be missing the point that they are coming from a single source. So wahdahu is collecting my distributed attention and taking it to one.
Do you have time for one more question, Maghrib?
So we have 5 minutes.
Okay.
We will finish in 5 minutes and not 20 minutes.
I just have one quick comment about how, for me, I can see how Wahdahu leads to some of the things Nursi is saying. I think if I just take oneness and God and what does being one mean next to mercy or compassion, sustainership, yeah, I would say, yeah, it's just oneness. It's not by itself. I don't feel so much from it. However, if I approach from this, I'm not approaching God in a vacuum. It's la ilaha illallah. Like there is like some qualities there. But also in my life, there's so many things that attach themselves to me as false gods, or I attach myself to them as false gods, or things that I find myself chasing after, or things that weigh down heavily upon me. And it gets to a point where the burden just becomes so big where now I can say wahdahu, la ilaha illallah wahdahu. Like it can almost break all of them. Like it can be like almost a weapon, you could say, or just a way to break all these false idols, which had like their hooks in me. But then when they break, I now feel relief. So it's the same things Nursi. Now I know my monarch, my creator is just one, not all these other things that have their hooks in me. And then I feel some relief there because all that pain and burden that initially I thought I was under because of multiple gods, let's say, now gone.
Like the creator of, very quickly, the creator of earthquake is the creator of your mother. You love your mother's mercy, but when it comes to earthquake, you feel like disoriented. Like, how come? Mother is being created, and then there's this earthquake or unpleasant things. This person is always coming from a single source. Nothing is by chance, nothing is a glitch in the existence. Because you might find yourself in explaining, oh, the children killed in the war zone. Who is answering that question? So,
We can have Maghrib, but my question is like, I think Nusi explains what happens if you established he is one. But how do you establish that he is one? For example, for La ilaha, we went in, for example, when we took the example of rain, we started with gravity, rain itself, the mystical Nigerian, we did a lot of like false la ilaha, la ilaha, la ilaha. But like, I'm still struggling with the concept of how do you establish that he is one, you know? And because like the justification which he gives is a lot of my problems will be solved if he is one. There's no reason for him being one. You know, my problems do not need to be solved actually. It doesn't need to be an answer that makes me happy. It could be a bad answer too.
Yep.
How do we establish he is actually one?
Inshallah, we will do it in coming weeks. Here the idea is realize again your current state, like before, at least to me, before realizing that you are chasing after like all these false idols, trying to please them, you know, this idea of idol or the God is in my life and I'm trying to please them, I need to satisfy all of them at once. This part is about establishing this basis that this is what you are, this is what you need. And once we establish that, now coming weeks, inshallah, we will try to, you know, show how he is the one is true. Inshallah, we will come to that. Alhamdulillah. One example, maybe before we finish with Abdullah's beautiful comments. So let's imagine, going back to Dua's question, let's imagine you have a professor teaching you something, but he has all these means of teaching you. He has some audio recordings, he has some class notes, he has some video recordings, he has its class as well, and then he has students that he, trained that you can help you and so on. All these different ways, means of teaching you. So you have all these different ways of reaching, say. So if you get lost in this multiplicity and think that, you have to, satisfy, quote unquote, the audio recordings. Like something happens with your video, like audio players, and you get crazy. Or the audio files doesn't work. Or you lose your class notes, you get crazy. You have bad relationship with the students that he trained, you get crazy. Anyway, when you get lost, sorry, when you get lost, within this multiplicity and forget that there's a professor, doesn't matter if you have audio recordings or not, if you have the class note or not, it doesn't matter. There's one professor, and that's the only thing that you care. Because if you want to understand, you can just meet with him and ask for questions. So I don't know if this is a good example or not, but knowing that all the different things coming from the same source kind of, saves you from being slave of different, the means, different colors. But anyway, let's hear Abdullah's beautiful comments and then inshallah finish.
Yeah, I was going to just answer how I come to this conclusion usually is that how we've seen in history and how we see if there are multiple powers in charge, there's always chaos. If there's only one, if you look at the whole universe as one, you'd see there's a lot of peace, especially on Earth. There's meteors crashing in, splitting into two. If there were two or even multiple gods who were as strong or as powerful, there's always going to be some kind of conflicts between them, and those conflicts would end up involving us at some point, I think. So that kind of gives.
Because at the end of La ilaha, we doesn't work. At least I don't understand it works for me here, because at the end of La ilaha, we established that after we've eliminated all the false ilah, the true ilah, Allah, doesn't actually have any of the attributes. So the chaos that we see in history from multiple people being in charge should not carry or at least apply to that power. Which is why I'm struggling that doesn't actually establish the fact that he has to be one or he needs to be one.
My suggestion is postpone this discussion till next week. Inshallah, as I said, like the idea here has to make sure that we are on the same page with that these things that we are speaking are relevant. Otherwise, without, if you say that I don't need such thing, who cares about whether he's one or not, whether there's a God or not, then there's no point of proving it either. So I guess the point here is just realizing that this is our human condition, that we are trying to satisfy all these different things. Because we are lost, Yusuf's words, we are usually lost in multiplicity. And this is our condition. This text is about that. And the next week, inshallah, we will start, just like we did with the La ilaha illallah, we will start exploring its truth. Okay? سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين